Today's is a classic. It's a very common one. It's something that I've experienced. I think probably at some time most people have had this one, the fear of not being liked. When we're young, we have this very deep need for security, and might have heard Gabor Mate talk about how our need for security often trumps our need for authenticity. There is a need to fit in with society, and anybody who's really not going to do that could be sociopathic in some ways. But it's where that need for security starts to trump the need for authenticity in later life, where we're still operating on childhood patterns of I need to do all of these things in order to be liked, to not rock the boat, to not address this intense fear of conflict in order to fit in. And when I do that, I actually sacrifice my authenticity, my authentic needs. And it's very common for some people who've just wanted to be liked their whole life, that they don't actually know what they need because they've suppressed their own needs for long enough that they're kind of numb. It can take a little while to get into that numbness and start to let it thaw out and let those needs reveal themselves. It's like they're being unlocked from the ice. As you start to get in touch with feelings and you start to get in touch with this biofeedback from the body, then you start to understand and decode them and translate them into what is being needed. And that's really, really key, because the needs, the things that come up in the body, you can distinguish between needs and wants and things like that. But the things that are needs that come up in the body are basically life trying to express itself. There's a motion to move towards this outcome, kind of a life push/pull, wanting to express itself through the body. You could say this is like your little corner of the universe to look after. As you start to go down the path more, what you include in this definition of self becomes larger. In nonviolent communication, they have the 3 stages of emotional liberation. The first stage is emotional slavery. That might look like codependency. This is very common, like covert contracts with nice people and people pleasing. I'm going to do this for you, and I'm not going to tell you what I want in return, but the return favor is you need to like me or to love me or to approve of me or not criticize me. That can be a big one as well. So that might look like emotional slavery. I'm codependent. My feelings and your feelings, there's no real boundary between them. They're not coming from an authentic place of I want to do this because of the joy of giving. I want to be able to honor that deep need to contribute and respect my capacity to give out into the world as I expand this definition of self to include other people. I'm connected. I'm a part of a bigger web, but oftentimes the emotional slavery is, well, I'm not going to serve myself at all. I'm going to serve other people because I want them to like me. It's like I want them to give these things back to me. And often that's where you can start to get into patterns of martyrdom and start to feel resentful and angry because you haven't looked at your own needs, you haven't deciphered them. A lot of times people who have this carry a lot of shame. The second stage from that in the NVC model is obnoxiousness, which is like, well, fuck everybody else's needs, my needs. This is a really uncomfortable and actually very important stage, because then you start learning what it is that you need, what is life trying to tell you through your body. This is stuff that's really, really uncomfortable for people. They might start to overcompensate a little bit more because they're not used to saying no, they're not used to asking for what they want, they're not used to any of this stuff, because when they were young they learned to suppress the rest of their needs because they needed to get their need for love met. So all of these other forms of expression that wanted to express themselves were subordinate to this need for security, survival, and love. So then the third stage is my needs and everyone else's needs. That's when you start to expand this definition of self, and you start to not self-sacrifice and self-martyr in that way, but actually feel what it is that you're needing and recognize that everybody else, they all have their own needs and desires, and then you can self-serve and other-serve at the same time. And if you can find the thing that really brings you to life and starts to kind of get you moving and gets you flowing, that automatically generates gifts for the people around you. So that's something like moving from coming like a beggar with an empty cup to get somebody to fill your cup, and you filling theirs, to I'm going to fill my own cup so much that it overflows and everybody can drink from this overflowing cup. So there's a lot of different feelings involved in all of this. Some of them can be a little bit numb, but one of the things that we'll try to avoid is this very, very deep fear of abandonment. Beneath all of that need to be liked is a young part that's saying, I don't want you to leave me. Very afraid of pain, of intensity of feeling, has learned to shut down lots of different parts of themselves just so they can survive. So there's a lot of survival stress still stored in the body. We'll go through and we'll look at some of that today and see if we can't release some of it to start becoming a little bit more authentic. All right? So take a moment to tune into where you are in the body. Notice what's happening. Hand on the belly, hand on the chest. Part of this feeling inquiry, what am I feeling, is to start to decipher what is it that I need. Really fundamental question. What is it that I need? What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I need? And then a third question, what is it that I'm available for? Is this a yes? Is this a no? Is this a maybe? Ask me later. Really good to have these questions just circulating around your system daily, regularly, so you can start to just tune into and hone into what is it that the body is trying to tell me. What is it telling me about my needs? And it's not immediately going to be obvious, but that's okay. It's a practice. It's like you're learning a language. There's going to be plenty of mistakes in that, and that's fine. All right, tapping around the chest. I really need to be liked. I really want people to like me. It's really important that people like me. It's really necessary for my survival. People really need to like me. I'm really afraid of not being liked. I'm really afraid of people not liking me. When I think of doing something that rocks the boat, I feel all this tension, all this anxiety, all this survival stress. And I end up reacting from that survival stress. And just doing whatever I can to please and appease. I just want to be liked. What I'm really saying with that is, I want to feel safe. And I'm willing to sacrifice my authenticity in order to feel safe, in order to survive. And at some point in my life, it was really true that I needed to do that. And there might still be some parts of my life where I still feel I need to do that. But I want to start to release some of this survival stress. To check in and see if that's still completely true. Because it could be that I'm not as small and as helpless as I used to be. That I'm not as dependent on the big people. That the part of me that protected me in childhood actually worked and got me to survive. because now I'm here. And maybe it just gently needs recalibrating to the here and now. Rather than the there and then. I have all these deep feelings. I feel a lot of shame. I feel like I carry so much shame. And that shame generates thoughts. Thoughts like, I'm so bad. And it could be that I've done things that I'm ashamed of. And all that survival stress is still in my body. And that shame is trying to tell me that you'd better make yourself small and unthreatening so that people accept you again. And people love you again. Because nobody's going to love you for who you are. That's a pretty dark story. Maybe that really felt true in childhood. Maybe there were so many expressions of myself that got deemed unacceptable. Just because my caretakers didn't like them. And their rule was law. Because I was completely dependent on them. But I might not be dependent anymore. And maybe there are parts of myself that weren't as unacceptable as I thought. And maybe I could start to release a little bit of this survival stress. From the body. And gently start to let my system know that sometimes it's safe not to be liked. I don't have to be liked by everyone. And in fact, if I'm being authentic, there's one thing that's certain. Not everyone is going to like that. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I never knew that people can actually handle their feelings. Maybe the adults around me when I was growing up were all highly dysregulated. And they didn't know how to handle their feelings without being reactive, without blowing up or shutting down or going distant. But I don't think I want to follow that path. I would like to learn how to feel what I feel and stay connected to myself during. Because as long as I'm connected to myself, that's all the safety I need. and I might be well practiced at self-abandoning. I might constantly abandon myself in order to be liked by others. But there's also a very real danger in that too. And that danger is I get backed up with anger, backed up with resentment. And then people end up not liking me anyway. Even if I'm holding all this anger in my body, and that anger doesn't have a place to go, I end up turning it inwards. Which ends up creating more shame. There's got to be a better way. I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want to keep moving between resentment and shame. All these stories that I tell myself about how I'm so bad, that I need to be liked by other people, and if they don't like me, that must mean that I'm bad. That really feels like emotional slavery. And it's definitely a form of codependence, which maybe I could use as another reason as for why I'm so bad. But how about I just let myself off the hook? That might not feel safe at first, because a part of my system might say, if you stop thinking you're so bad, then nobody's going to love you. If you start thinking actually you're okay, people are going to abandon you. And you know what? Maybe I would rather that other people abandon me than I keep abandoning myself. Maybe I'm more capable than I used to be. I'm not dependent for my survival in the same way that I was when I was a child on the people around me. And maybe now I'm an adult, what people actually want to see is me being authentic. And it might cause a few ripples at first. But if people don't want to see me authentically, then what kind of a relationship is that anyway? If people don't want to see me exactly as I am, and support me and bring out the best in me, and support my authentic expression, then I don't really think that's a very good relationship anyway. I'm willing to accept that I can handle my feelings. And as I can handle my feelings like disappointment, maybe other people can handle theirs. Because I would rather have a connection that's real. I would rather have something authentic. Because that feels much more safe. And constantly walking on eggshells. Trying to do what I think other people want me to do. And projecting out onto others. What I think they need from me. In order to get my need for love met. Maybe what they need is me showing up. Maybe what they need is the truth. Because the truth is very integrative. It's very solid. It's very stable. It's very real. But people don't always like to hear it. And that's where it started to feel unsafe. But I don't want to be a slave to other people's reactivity. I want to be a beacon of truth and authenticity that can help light the way. And illuminate the dark. To make the unconscious conscious. And give people something they can rely on. I want to be reliable. Because maybe that's much more solid than pretending to be nice. And just going through the motions. To meet my need to be liked. Which is really just me choosing safety over authenticity. And that doesn't mean that I'm terrible. It just means that I need to create my own safety within myself and be on my own side. And not shame and judge and criticize. Because that's not a long-term sustainable motivator. It's only going to produce more survival stress. It's going to keep me scared my whole life. And I don't want to be scared my whole life. I know that I'm tougher than that. I know that I can handle my feelings. I know that I can handle not being liked. And I might just find But the more authentic I become, the more people start to come out of the woodwork who actually like me for who I am. Rather than who I think they want me to be. And wouldn't an authentic connection like that be better? I'd be willing to give it a shot. So releasing all this remaining survival stress, all this remaining emotional charge. I'm not always going to get it right. At least not by other people's standards. And that's okay. People are going to project all kinds of things onto me. I'm always going to be somebody's hero. And somebody else's villain. That's not something I can control. And all the stress and strain of trying to control that narrative in someone else's head is making me really tired. And possibly even sick. So I'm willing to let go of some control. Just a little bit. And take small and necessary steps. To moving from childhood security into adult authenticity. Ooh, take a breath. Ooh, big topic. Security to authenticity, they're both very real needs. Gently coming round to be on your own side. So much of it is this practice of moving from this fear of being abandoned by others to looking at the real threat, which is I'm actually abandoning myself. And if I keep doing that, if I keep neglecting this space here, then that's not going to go too well. I need to tend to my own garden so that my tree gives fantastic fruits, and then not fruits filled with martyrdom and resentment. I'm not just giving to get, I'm actually giving because it's like, this is what feeds my soul. I'm not looking for an outcome, I'm not attached to an outcome, I'm doing it because it feels right, rather than I'm doing it because I'm terrified. It doesn't mean that I don't like being appreciated, it doesn't mean that I don't like it when people acknowledge it and notice it, and I'll take that too, but it's more, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it for the process of what it feels like to actually give from the heart. I feel the resonance. I feel that kind of harmonic goodness. And that's really where we start to step into that more authentic expression of self. And then it's looking at protecting that precious capacity to give, and not letting everybody take so much that you end up with nothing left, just a kind of a shell. So it is drawing boundaries and saying no, and being able to express wants and needs and desires, and just respecting that this is like, this body is life. This is you kind of here taking care of that for a little while and managing it and saying, okay, what do you need? You're just as much a human being as everybody else. You can include yourself in part of that. Selflessness that doesn't include this as part of everything, as part of the expression of life, is not a fully wholly integrated self. It's like me and others rather than me or others. Hopefully that shed a little bit of light. Obviously there's a lot of work to do around this stuff. It's a very chronic kind of freeze, shut down, high anxiety, high feeling of shut down. Might be that not all of the survival stress is released from that. Keep doing this as much as you need to do it, and maybe look through some of the other videos as well and see if they're helpful. It's just, we're trying to just gently rewire and repattern the thoughts, but then also these responses in the body. So yeah, let me know, comments, feedback, anything that you found interesting, useful, or anything that you want me to look at. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.